It is again my honor to invite a friend, and I'm really grateful for him being willing to address our summit. Johnny Ferry has extensive work experience in business development, marketing, and product development. Johnny worked at Honeyville Incorporated from 2002 to present, starting as the VP of Marketing and Product Development, and later transitioning into the role of VP of Business Development. In 2018, he became a board member at Utah Manufacturers Association, but very recently, within the last couple of months, he's now the president and CEO of UMA, Utah Manufacturers Association. Without further ado, Johnny, come on up.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for letting me be here. My first connection and association with Sean was a couple years ago. Some of you participated or attended. We put on as a not anything to do with the work that I do, but as a after work activity. I serve on the board of the Major Brent Taylor Foundation. A couple years ago, we put on an event up here in honor of 9/11. And some of you may have walked through that. We held it over in North Logan at the indoor soccer field there. Sean was one of the first to volunteer, come forward and help us out. And that was really appreciate all the work and effort that you put into the community, Sean. It's incredible. I'm honored to be here. I have just noticed up on the screen that this is, just so you're aware, this is not the Ogden Weaver Chamber Board of Governors meeting. That was actually the meeting I presented to last Friday. And before I sent this over for the presentation, I apologize. I've got the wrong meeting starting off right there. But I will share a very similar presentation that I gave there. This all started for me, as Sean kind of alluded to. I'm going to give you a little bit of background, and then I want to talk about what manufacturing is, what it means to be a manufacturer here in the state of Utah. I was born and raised over in Box Elder County in a faraway place called West Corinne. If any of you have ever been over to your brethren on the other side of the mountain, that's where I was born and raised. My family are 5 generations of cattle farmers and ranchers. My full name is John Yeoman Ferry the Fifth, number 5, and also known as Johnny 5. My son, who is attending currently Utah State, he is number 6. And if his son does not call his child John Yeoman Ferry, then he will be out of the family. Most of my experience in growing up was on a cattle ranch. That's what my family did. We were a beef finishing facility and continue to operate. Thousands of cattle go through our facility, and then they end up over here in Cache Valley. A lot of them do here at the slaughter plant. But my early days were spent farming, ranching, hunting, and just being a part of a family business. And so I learned a lot of things there. I went to Box Elder High School, where I met my future wife. Did not know at the time her family had a little company called Honeyville Grain. That's also to your neighbor, just on the other side of the mountain. At the time, I served a mission in Toronto, Canada. It was a Chinese-speaking mission, and came back, attended BYU. My wife was still there, and I'll just mention, since she's not here, she was crazy about me then, just like she is now. We got married, and her grandfather approached me, and he asked if I would have an interest in joining their company, being a part of something. And I said, okay, we'll do it. And he said, the only thing is you got to go live in California. So we packed up and moved to Rancho Cucamonga. It is a real place. In fact, I spent 12 years in that area, as Honeyville had a facility down there. My first job, the first thing that I did, was working the production line. We had a Rovima machine that was making trail mix for the USDA. It had a bunch of different ingredients in it, but one particularly I remember, it was a dried cranberry. Dried cranberries would be carried up into the blending machine on a Z conveyor. So you dump on the floor, it would go up and then bounce along its way and then dump into the machine. At the time, when that went, we were producing. It was a night shift that I was running, so I had a team of like 6 people on the line. My first job, right out of college, and at the time I just would go home, and because these cranberries would rain down on me as they'd bounce off of the Z conveyor. Then they would land on the floor, and I would step on them, and I would have to go home at night with my screwdriver and scrape out those cranberries. I thought I had made it. That was the greatest thing that I could ever do, right? Coming out of college and having a job. Um, I have 4 kids. All 4 of those kids were born in California. We ended up spending 12 years there. I started off with the manufacturing, then moved into supply chain, and then moved into scheduling, and then eventually, kind of naturally, gravitated toward customer relations and innovation and product development. As we started to develop products, we expanded. Now, I'll pause and tell another story. One of our customers was a gentleman by the name of Joel Clark. Joel, his mother had a recipe, and she would purchase the Honeyville flour manufactured right over just across the mountain here as a hard white wheat flour. Much of the wheat was grown in this area from around here. We would grind it up, and then she would put it into a pancake mix, then put it in Ziploc bags. And Joel, as a kid, would go around and he would put it in a little red wagon and he would carry it around his neighborhood and he would sell it to the local community. As that got bigger, Joel came and approached. He called me one day and said, "Johnny, I want to take this big, but I don't have any money to do it. Would you guys be willing to help us?" And I talked to the ownership and we said, "Let's do it." So we purchased equipment. We started to supply all of the ingredients as well as packaging that would then eventually make this pancake mix, which went local first and then started to go bigger. One day I was giving a tour to a Costco buyer, the Northwest Costco buyer in Southern, and this is down in Rancho Cucamonga. And we were walking along and there was a machine that was running, and out of the machine were these boxes with a bear on the front of them and spitting out a line, boom, 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 just that hum of manufacturing, right? The buyer stopped me and said, "What is that?" And I said, "That's a Kodiak cake." And the buyer looked at me and said, "I'd like to know more about these Kodiak cakes." And so I introduced the buyer to Joel, and we started to sell in our first region of Costco. Shortly thereafter, Joel got on Shark Tank, season 2. You can go and watch it. Nobody picked it up. Nobody gave any investment, but Joel was smart. He got on there because he wanted the marketing exposure. And shortly after that, we introduced a protein pancake, which became our power cakes. And it exploded. Today, we're in every Costco across the United States. Internationally, we're in every store you want to ever go into. Kodiak is the #2 pancake in the United States of America. All of it is made here locally. We manufacture out of our headquarters in Ogden, Utah, near the BDO, as well as grinding the flour and having other ingredients and things that we do out of our milling operations. That was one of the big ones that we ran with. We also manufacture for several other brands. If you walk down the baking store aisle, you'd find Betty Crocker, Duncan Hines, Idahoan, Ghirardelli. Those are all products manufactured right here in Utah. You may not have known it. Oh, look, there's me. That's one of the boxes of Kodiak sitting on the line. That's what I showed the buyer a long time ago. I then bring up, so after the 12 years in California, I moved to Utah and joined the Utah Manufacturers Association, Honeyville did, and I was asked to be on the board at the time. As I went through that process, as Sean mentioned, I eventually sit now before you as the president and CEO of that organization. I asked the question, what is a Utah manufacturer? So before I took on this position, I had to ask that question of myself. Help me define it. So here it is. I'm going to help give a definition of what a Utah manufacturer is. Most of you, in fact, there's quite a few of them here in the Valley. You've got manufacturing facilities. Some of you think of manufacturing.
Who's responsible for this?
If something goes wrong, you find a scapegoat. It's what you do.
What'd you say?
Kelly. Want to save 15% or more on car insurance? You switch to Geico. It's what you do.
Rick, don't walk away from me.
Okay, generally, most of us think of manufacturing as something like that. In fact, we see a facility, a building, something like a building with steam coming out of the top of it, and we think, oh, somewhere behind those walls, there's something magical made. And that's generally what we think. That's how we think about it. But there's so much more. Yes, those are primary manufacturers, and you do have several of them, some of them probably in this room. The reality of it is, though, is that as a primary manufacturer, you need support up and down the line. And what I mean by that, everything that leads to that moment of manufacturing, which would include things like the marketing and the R&D, the sourcing, regulatory, the contracting and quotations, the incoming raw materials and pre-production, that is all part of manufacturing as well. And everything after the moment of manufacturing, which includes your post-production, your quality, warehousing, staging, freight, delivery, and then finally billing. All of that is part of manufacturing too. And there's even more. That would include all of the overhead practices, the management, your HR, your accounting, safety training, customer service. In total, that's an incredible amount of effort and resource that goes into that moment of manufacturing. And I think for me, that answered the question. What is a Utah manufacturer? It is all of the above. It's everything that goes into it. Many of you probably are either a primary manufacturer or a support to a manufacturer in some way. We touch manufacturing so much here in the state. In fact, it represents over 40% of our state's GDP. Now, many, when you think about that, well, what is the quantity then? How many manufacturers are there here in the state? According to the Department of Workforce Services, registered manufacturers are as follows. Nearly 5,000 plus registered businesses, manufacturing businesses in the state of Utah. And over 85,000 registered businesses that support that manufacturing in some way. That's a pretty darn big group. That is a lot of people. That is a lot of employees. That's a lot of services that are provided daily to support our manufacturers. That's what Utah Manufacturing Association represents. All of them. What is the offering that Utah Manufacturers brings to the table? 4 things. So when you have all of those potential business opportunities in front of you, is there ways you can combine those together for the following? Number 1 is benefits. So as a Utah Manufacturing Association, we offer to our members, members being anyone who wants to be a part of the Utah Manufactured, whether you're one of the 5,000 primary manufacturers or the 85,000 plus support to manufacturers, you can be a member of the Utah Manufacturing Association. It's a annual dues, $500 starting point. It's pretty easy to get into it. But what do you get from it? Number 1, you're part of a pooled 401k if you want to be part of that. You also get health insurance, combined health insurance, better rates, right? And then finally, a 5% discount on your workers' comp. That's just per entry. That's part of what we do. If there's anybody interested in any of those things, welcome to chat with me or get on our website, manufacturingutah.com. We offer training. So all manufacturing generally needs these following trainings: frontline leadership, continuous improvement, and then safety. That's all part of what we offer as well. Third is advocacy. So lobbying up with the state, pushing for better business practices. All of that is part. We also do peer relations with other groups, like being here and working with you as understanding what your needs might be for manufacturing here in the state, and then grant support. I will say we are kind of unique. We don't rely upon state funds or federal funds in order to operate. We operate through membership dues. So we are really manufacturers. That's what we are. We're not relying upon state or grant funds in order to survive. We are manufacturers. Finally, the networking. That's all about awareness of things that are going on, like this event. As we work with partners and understand what's happening, you have events like this, you meet people. But with that database of nearly 90,000 registered businesses who see the UMA come through and that logo coming through on a daily basis, that helps us to network and to know who we work with on a regular basis and how we can help. It's all about bringing value to a member. I'm going to skip over this one and go right here. A couple statistics to think about. All right, here we go. The top 5 manufacturing cities in the state of Utah. This is by number of manufacturers who are registered within a city boundary. Okay. Number 5, West Jordan. Number 4, Sandy. Number 3, Orem. Number 2, Ogden. And number one, Salt Lake City. This kind of gives you an idea where all the state, what's happening in the state. But from a bigger perspective, here is the full list of the top 30, I believe, or about 30 of them that are there. Just to kind of give you a view and get a feel for where you sit. Just out of the top 5, look at that. There's Logan. Go Logan, making his way up there. All right. And you are growing, definitely. You are impacting the state by all of your manufacturing practices that you have here. Keep moving up that list. All right. Next statistic. How about what are the top 5 industries in the state? Top 5 manufacturing industries. Number 5, consumer goods. This is a buy and sell directly to a consumer. Number 4, construction and infrastructure. Number 3, printing, labeling, signage. A lot of businesses set up to do that. Number 2, wood product manufacturing. Surprising. And then finally, number 1, metal fabrication. Those are your top 5 manufacturing industries here in the state. That's what we do. I was at a summit recently down in Cedar City, and the governor spoke, and he talked about Utah is very unique when it comes to our minerals, our critical minerals, and what's available to us. Utah has 80% of the critical minerals necessary that can be mined or are currently being mined versus anywhere else in the world. Utah holds 80% of those critical minerals. That's a pretty unique position to be in, especially at this time when everybody's talking about those critical minerals and having access to them. When you think about what manufacturing means to the state, as I just wrap up, for me, it meant everything. It was my life, and it still has been. For those who really, it comes down to who we employ, who we work with in the being able to support and bring the lifestyle and the community support and everything else that we want to have. The biggest challenges that we're facing right now in the manufacturing would be our ability to keep up. Utah is in a very unique spot geographically. We're located really as the center of the West. For Honeyville in a commodity position, freight was a major impact in how we moved product across the U.S. Utah was central to making sure that we could hit anywhere on the East Coast. But we're challenged because we have to be able to hire and keep cost of living down. We have to have good employees. We have to have trained employees to come out and work, run the production lines. That's all important. And in order for us to maintain that high impact in the state of Utah, we've got to continue our good business practices. We've got to work together in different communities like this to help to bring and continue our manufacturing expertise and being the top in the nation. I'm grateful for the opportunity I've had to address you. I'm going to pause for a second. I want to answer any questions. Is there any questions anybody has in relation to either my background or to what the UMA and what we represent here locally? Any questions? There's a question in the back. Yes, we've got the mill there, the original mill, and so continue to operate that mill. Yeah, when you think of cities by city, then because most of Box Elder where the manufacturing is happening, it's in unincorporated, so it's going to be in county, and so that's correct. Yeah. But it would definitely from Box Elder County is a growing county, just like Cache Valley County is. It's growing in manufacturing for sure. Yeah, you would see that. Great question. So in kind of classifying manufacturing broadly, all manufacturing is kind of what I defined before, anything that's happening before or after the point of manufacturing and the point of manufacturing. But Thicol itself is what we consider, if you zoomed in closer, it's advanced manufacturing. That's usually aerospace and defense. Also underneath the manufacturing umbrella, but very specific classification that they have where it's aerospace and defense. Yep. All of those would be considered consumer goods. Like multi-mill is definitely one of the consumer good categories. Yeah. All of this is the government keeps track of this with what they call the NAICS codes. Like that's the classification that you're required, and you can only sign up for one, with whatever that is, whatever you're, because many companies also do different things, right? But what you majorly do is that one thing, which becomes your NAICS code, and that code is how they classify, how they keep track, how these numbers come about too. Great question. Where you're thriving is in this, that you tend to have cost of living that is more affordable. And if you think about your everyday manufacturing worker and employee, they tend to live in those communities. So you have a strength in that you have numbers, that you continue to have numbers, and that will go that way. As costs continue to rise in more urban settings, you're going to have, that's going to be a challenge for an everyday worker to have to transit all the way into Salt Lake City. I mean, nowadays that's what ends up happening, and it gets old, right? That's not what they want. So you're particularly up here in Cache Valley, you got an amazing opportunity as you're relatively low in expense to compare to Salt Lake City, for example. That's why a lot of these manufacturers are popping up. All these buildings are popping up in different places, right? Is because the workforce is available to work them. I think that's an important part of what happens here. Yeah, you bet. Any other questions? There's one right there. Absolutely. I do. Yeah. And it all can be sorted. And I would recommend, there are several different groups that kind of analyze it, but the Department of Workforce Service, the Utah Department of Workforce Services has a lot of that data. They're kind of the central point of because that's where people report in how many employees they have. And I think that's a great place to go take a look if you're really interested. Maybe call them up and see if you can get someone mentioned they were part of that recent in here. Anyways, that's where I would start. Please. There is, I don't have the data in front of me. I've seen it. Its exports have grown from the state of Utah, obviously, as we've grown and gotten unique businesses here. It's an exciting place to be in. Tariffs are having an impact, right? Tariffs are the big thing. It's the big manufacturing moment right now to bring manufacturing jobs back to the United States. There is there's data that would show that we are being impacted by those for sure, both good and bad. But generally for manufacturing, it's generally been good, but it's by industry. Each industry is a little bit different. You can see up here, I forgot to show this slide. There's all the different industries, right? Anywhere from the highest industry, which is that metal fabrication, down to our up and coming shipbuilding industry here in the state of Utah, right? But those are all the industries that generally we kind of classify, and the number of businesses within those. It's incredible that the state is such a great place to generate innovation. There's just good industry here. There's good people that work. And I think I found that. I've spent time in many of our just from my own personal experience with Honeyville, we have facilities in California, Arizona, and here in Utah. By far, Utah tops. It's the best place to do business. It really is. We want to maintain that. And that's why there's got to be things like this that help. We've got to keep our lawmakers in line, got to help them understand how important this is to the communities for us to have these type of jobs and opportunities, right? So just looking at there's a question, someone have a question back here, please. Policy, but what's trying to keep supply chain supporting you or all the vendors. Keep the supply chain ability. It's a great question. Honestly, that is that's the reason that the Utah Manufacturers Association exists, is to connect those industries, right? Those who want to service a company like Honeyville, who may have, whether it be a machine company or a safety supply company or something that we would use in our manufacturing process. Typically, I think generally we can state the closer it is to you, the more cost efficient it can be. Particularly in a commodity world, I can't ship wheat all the way from Canada to Utah and compete. It just doesn't, it's because of commodities, dollars don't make sense. So instead, we contract with local farmers and growers, and then that economically makes sense. We bring it into our mill and manufacture it right there. So most industry, generally the industry freight is an impact. And so buying local can tend to help you, and source locally can also be more fresh, right? It can be, there's a lot of benefits to buying local. But the challenge sometimes is you just don't know it exists. So how do I know that there's a farmer who wants to sell me wheat and that I need that wheat, that the supply demand? And that's an important, like organizations like what you're doing here and networking and getting together to find people who you didn't know. We talk about IT, right? Right? You brought up the services. I'm sitting here thinking, man, wouldn't it be nice is because right now our IT is our IT covers both California, Arizona, and Utah. It'd be nice if locally here there was something that was a solution for that. I just think that that's the kind of networking that needs to take place in order for that to be successful. There's a question back over here. It just all comes down to the industry that you're in. So in grain manufacturing, there's little water usage, but there are other industries that are heavy water usage. And so, yes, it does. It will impact, and it has impacted and continue to impact. And so there are industries that won't thrive here because they won't be able to access water. There's others that, don't need that so much and they can thrive here. So it's kind of more specific to each industry. I would imagine that shipbuilding needs water. Any other questions? I want to thank you for your time. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate I could be here.